Red is the color of the blood which men must shed for their redemption and liberty. Black is the color of the noble and distinguished race to which we belong. Green is the color of the luxuriant vegetation of our motherland, and yellow is the color of happiness and prosperity. The colors red, black, green, and yellow all symbolize pride and unity. They symbolize and show that Black people have come together and will come together to overcome any obstacle. So much has happened since Africans were first brought to the United States. So much has changed over the course of time. So much history has been recorded. So much history will be recorded. But right now, we want to focus on our past and our present to trace where we've come from and where we are. Freedom is such an abstract term. It is really in the eye of the beholder. But for Africans, African Americans, past slaves, freedom simply meant liberation from slavery or restraint from the power of another. Slavery was abolished in 1865, which was 246 years after the first slave was brought to America. But we do understand that there were years after 1865 where African Americans had to endure hardships. Prior to 1865, there were many men and women who forged a unity to fight on the behalf of slaves. Many abolitionists unified during slavery to work together to make sure that it was ended. They knew that people were being mistreated physically, mentally, and often spiritually because the Word of God was certainly misinterpreted to keep the slave system going. But they left us with words of wisdom. So let's listen to our youth voice over some of the most powerful, unifying, and encouraging messages left to us by our ancestors, former slaves, abolitionists, powerful men and women who helped us to get to where we are today by sacrificing themselves and making sure that they were on the front lines to end slavery.
The life of the nation is secured only while the nation is honest, truthful, and virtuous. Spoken by Frederick Douglass.
There are no bonds so strong as those which are formed by suffering together. Harriet Ann Jacobs.
If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Spoken by Frederick Douglass.
It's words like these that embolden us to take up our cross and do what is necessary to make sure that our children and their children no longer suffer. So we appreciate those of our past, those who inspired to make a change for us. Now we understand that 100 years after the 13th Amendment was put into place, that Black people still had to overcome. However, we were not slaves, but we still had to rise up and challenge people to make sure that we were treated equally under the law. So that goes to show us that we will always have to fight. The Civil Rights Movement was one of those moments in history that required us to not be comfortable with status quo. We had to challenge those people who felt like we were not worth anything. We had to challenge people to make sure that we got what we deserved under the law. Civil rights is a class of rights that protect individuals' freedom from infringement by government, social organizations, and private individuals. They ensure one's entitlement to participate in the civil life of society and the state without discrimination or repression. So yes, I did say the word fight. We must always fight to make sure that these rights are not misinterpreted or ignored. Our youth are back to read again some of the most powerful and most encouraging words given to us by our past civil rights leaders.
Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy to a friend, by Martin Luther King Jr.
I would like to be remembered as a person who wanted to be free, so other people would be also free. Rosa Parks.
We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. Spoken by Martin Luther King Jr.
The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. Spoken by Malcolm X.
Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Spoken by James Baldwin.
Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation. Coretta Scott King.
The civil rights movement was important and it is still important to us right now. The civil rights movement really did not end. Some may say you can see it starting up again. The late Julian Bond, a social activist and leader of the civil rights movement, once said, "The civil rights movement didn't begin in Montgomery and it didn't end in the 1960s. It continues on to this very minute." You'll notice that there is an image from 1963 beside an image from 2020. That says to me that the movement really is not over. It really is continuous. Although the issues may be different, we still have to fight. We still have to make sure that we are coming together as a people to make sure that our voices are heard. So I ask again, where are we now? It is 2021. The late, great John Lewis said the civil rights movement was based on faith. Many of us who were participants in this movement saw our involvement as an extension of our faith. We saw ourselves doing the work of the Almighty. Segregation and racial discrimination were not in keeping with our faith, so we had to do something. Knowing where you come from can directly impact where you are going. It is important to understand that we have had so many movements in American history. We have made so much progress, but although we've made progress, we are not finished. The movement then and the movement now have several things in common. One of them being humanity, decency, respect, love for one another, equality, equity. It is important that you know where you stand, and it is important that you remember where you've come from so you'll know where you are going. You see, on the left, that was then, but on the right is now. But that is not where the story will end. The images that you saw were designed to remind you of how far we have come and how much we have accomplished. But they were also put in this presentation to show you where we are now. But we do hope that it sparks an everlasting faith that shows you this is not over. We have so much more to accomplish, and we have so many more places that we can go. Our former First Lady Michelle Obama told us, people who are truly strong lift others up. People who are truly powerful bring others together. What will you do? As we come to a close, let us be reminded of what our new Vice President Kamala Harris said, and that is, the American dream belongs to all of us. No matter what has gone on in history and what is going on now, it is evident that God is in control, and He shows us this every time He gets a chance. So, we thank those who have put in great effort to see that we are who we are today and where we are today, despite our obstacles. Please listen to our National Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman's poem that she so eloquently recited at the 2021 inauguration. We appreciate her and we thank her for showing our youth that young people can lead.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the west. We will rise from the wind-swept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
As we come to a close, I hope that you appreciate the walk in the past. I hope that you can appreciate where we are currently, and I hope that you feel faithful about where we are going. The future is definitely bright, despite the obstacles that we know we will overcome.